All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. Dallas Cowboys, of course, have begun their preparation for Monday Night Football. Obviously, a lot of news with the trade deadline right around the corner. A lot of spicy stuff to get to today, as always. But first, let's get things started with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. And I got an interesting chart for you guys here that I saw on X, and this is a sort of a graphical representation of the Cowboys' run defense on each of the gaps, each of the three gaps, working left to right on your screen. You've got the C gap outside the left tackle, the B gap in between the left tackle, left guard, A gap between the center and left guard, then obviously the A, B, C gaps on the right side of the opposition of the offense on the opposition is from the defensive perspective. And basically their EPA per rush they're giving up in those gaps. The red is obviously bad. They're surrendering a lot. The green is good, right? They're actually winning in those opportunities. And you'll notice there's a lot of bad numbers in there, certainly in the B and the C gaps for sure. But the A gaps are actually green. The A gaps are actually good. And I think this is a Kenny Clark. And obviously you can throw some Oso Adigizua and some Solomon Thomas stuff in there too. Maybe even Mozzie Smith, give him credit where credit is due. We're in the A gaps, which have been a issue for Dallas over the past couple seasons. It really was the biggest issue for Dallas. They're actually good, right? And if you look at the B gaps in terms of the average of the two, it's much lower than the C gaps. So you could make an argument that the Cowboys defense, interior wise, is better than what we've seen in years past, which is kind of what we expect, right? You upgrade, Mozzie Smith, a Joseph last year, even Hankins, who I think was serviceable, but he was far from elite, of course, put in a tough situation with Dallas, asked to basically be a run stuffing extraordinaire. And you throw in Kenny Clark, and while he's been far from perfect, and there have been some criticisms of Clark, what he has done, along with the rest of the crew, of course, is stabilize the A gap, right? And I think credit has to be given there. Now, the challenge will become for the Dallas defense, and they have failed to even remotely come close to meeting this challenge, is how do they stop these off-tackle runs? How do they stop these, toss plays and things like that, which they've absolutely struggled with. That's a lot more defensive end play. That's a lot more linebacker play. That's a lot more corner and safety run fit play, in which they were, if we look at the Broncos game specifically, categorically awful at that. But in terms of the A-gap run defense, which had been an issue for a number of years, the Cowboys, to their credit, at this point, I think the addition of Kenny Clark kind of drives this, have gotten better. And I think if you're looking for somewhat of a positive, if you're trying to get out your magnifying glass and find some bright spot to hang your hat on, there's not a lot when it comes to this defense. I think this is something here. I think it's actually really impactful. All right, let's get into some news here. This is from a couple days ago, and I wanted to talk about this. It says, this is from Pro Football Talk. Report the Cowboys have had no contract talks with George Pickens. Pickens obviously doing a lot of good things with the Dallas Cowboys up to this point so far in the season. And there's a lot of people like, oh my goodness, here we go again. Like another contract drama. Oh gosh, what's going to happen with Pickens? And I can't tell you how much I absolutely love, and I mean this, love the fact that Cowboys have had zero contract talks with George Pickens, because this is basic risk reward stuff. Right, George Pickens came to the Dallas Cowboys as a talented player that hadn't lived up to it with Pittsburgh, not the production even remotely close based on his level of talent, and also had been at times at Georgia, kind of a distraction, whether off the field or on the field locker room. There were some issues with Pickens, some dumb penalties, things like that, right? Just who George Pickens had been at that point in his career, both collegiately and professionally with Pittsburgh. So he comes to Dallas and is doing a really good job. And I think only one dumb penalty so far this season, as far as I can remember. And has been very productive and has been extremely productive. It's been a great weapon for him for sure. But if you look at the risk profile, if you think about it on a sliding scale, right now, George Pickens, all the risk, if they entered in a contract negotiation right now, would be on the Cowboys side. Pickens is playing great. He's a great teammate, right? Great in the locker room, right? Offense is looking good. Right now, if the Dallas were to extend George Pickens, there would be only room to the downside, right? Because there hasn't been any issues with Pickens in the locker room. What if he does have some? What if his production dips, right? What if, God forbid, he gets hurt, right? Now is not the time to work on any contract negotiation. Listen, you can do that in a month. You can do that in January and February, because guess what? How much better is George Pickens going to be over the next 3 or 4 months? Maybe a little bit better, because it's hard to be, he's been so good, it's hard to be significantly better. So you may take on a little bit more risk if you wait to the end of the season, but not a lot. But you could also take on more reward if Pickens has a couple bad games. If his production dips, as I think it probably will, just because as teams react to him, as CeeDee Lamb gets opportunities, as the Cowboys run the football more, right? Things like that, right? There's a chance, and I'm not rooting for George Pickens to have less production, but there's a chance that his sort of value, at least perceived value, will dip a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. He's a good player, and I think the Cowboys will at least franchise tag him, and probably, if he maintains this level of production, probably will extend him. But right now, the risk profile is 100% against the Dallas Cowboys. You do not want to extend someone when they're at their peak, right? It's one of those things. It's classic business 101. You don't want to get in contract negotiations with a player or any kind of asset in this case where things are going absolutely perfect because they have all the leverage. They have all of the risk has been shifted over to you side. They have very little risk, right? But if you wait, you change the risk profile. And here's the thing, because right now Pickens is playing so good, is that even if he continues to play good, his value isn't going to change because it's already so high, right? Based on how he's played so far this season and how he's fit in the Dallas Cowboys locker room, his value can maybe get a little bit better. It can only get, if you look at the most likely direction, worse. So wait. It's the right move to make. There's a lot of people out there like, oh my goodness gracious, why aren't they extending him already? There's going to be more drama. Guys, it's the right move, right? Sometimes you got to make the right move. For example, they extended Ferguson before the season, coming off of a down year. It's the right move, right? Makes sense. They extended Deron Bland, coming off a season where he had, I think, no interceptions, if memory serves, had some injuries. It's the right move, right? Again, it's this is how you manage the team. This is how you make good decisions. You extend players, you evaluate when their risk profile is accurate. Now, in other times, they haven't done it so good, right? They've waited to extend Dak Prescott after the 2023 MVP season. Not a good deal, right? Just that was dumb. Same thing with CeeDee Lamb, right? That was dumb. That was foolish. This is smart, right? And a lot of people are critical of the Dallas Cowboys for this. I'm like, no, this is the right move to make. 100%. You never negotiate with someone when they're at their highest value, right? Certainly perceived value. Let it wait. Let the risk profile change. Good job by Dallas here in terms of what they're doing. All right, let's get into this next report, courtesy of John Machota. And this one continues to raise some eyebrows, at least to me. Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer said he has spent a significant amount more time in defensive meetings compared to the start of the season. That's to help. It's not to get in the way. I give DC Matt Eberflus a ton of credit, having been a coordinator, having had head coaches come sit in my meetings and stuff. You don't like it. I took it personal. Why are you in my meeting? Flus has not been like that at all. Okay, so I talked about this a few weeks ago at the first time this report came out, and I said this feels like something we've seen in corporate America a lot, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Where listen, when the big boss has to come in, and sit in on the meeting with the middle manager, which is in effect what Flus is at this point, then it's sort of like, hey, this middle manager may not be here very long. Seems like he's on very thin ice. The big boss, if he trusts his lieutenants the way, like, for example, Shawnee probably trusts Clayton Adams, doesn't need to sit on Clayton Adams meetings, doesn't need to sit on Connor Riley's offensive line meetings, right? So he trusts those guys because those are guys doing a good job. Those are guys who are really crushing it. The fact that he's sitting in on Eberflus's meeting, I think it says something, right? It really does. And there's a couple points here to break down. First and foremost, and when the Cowboys talk about, listen, we have the personnel, we're just not executing, this kind of says they're backing up what they're saying, right? A lot of people saying, oh, that's empty words. Listen, the fact that Shawnee's sitting in on meetings and trying to influence Flus and is directly influencing Flus, I mean, if you look at the changes that have been made to the defense this season, I mean, I don't think some of them are obviously Flus, obviously, but I think the high-level ones, the bigger ones, that's Shawnee. Jadeveon Clowney, benching Damone Clark, playing Leofau more, playing Shamar James more, Ezra Rocco getting the most snaps at the edge position over the past 5-6 weeks, right? Changing up the coverage, mixing things up, simplifying the communication. Like, I'm sure Flus had his role in those, but Shawnee led and spearheaded those changes. I think that we can all say that's pretty much a fact at this point. And the fact that Shawnee is still sitting in on those meetings, still influencing Eberflus, I think it's a sign that Eberflus is on a lot thinner ice. I'm not a big fire Matt Eberflus guy, and I don't know if Shawnee's looking to fire him either. But I think he's setting a standard, saying, listen, you guys aren't playing well at all. You aren't executing well. You're not doing anything well. You're not coaching well. I think that's the big thing there. And he mentioned this, I think, a couple instances so far this week. So we're not coaching good enough. And I think that's really important. And the other point I want to get to when it comes to this is one thing I appreciate about Shawnee is he recognizes the value of this opportunity more than any first-time head coach I've ever seen, right? You've seen a lot of first-time head coaches, right? They just, obviously, they're kind of trying to keep their head above water. It's a tough situation, whether they're winning or losing. Shawnee really appreciates this. He's not going to let this opportunity get squandered, or at least he's going to do everything he can to take advantage of it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's done such a good job. Great job with the culture. He's been a leader every step of the way. I mean, I think from leadership and a culture perspective, B plus for sure. I think in terms of in-game management, I would give him a B plus as well. Penalties, I give him a C. Although, I kind of come around on penalties because I did some research and the Parcells' teams had a lot of penalties, right? So it becomes kind of an interesting concept. I think penalties have just as much to do with personnel and familiarity, right? If you have the right guys and they've played in your system for a long time, you get lower penalties. Right now, the Cowboys are going through massive personnel upheaval, and it's a first-year system. So I'll give them a little bit of slack there, but I'll still give them a C there with the penalties. I think offense has been an A plus. I think we can all agree they've exceeded expectations for sure. So overall, I'd say B plus grade, and he's doing everything the right way. I mean, the only thing that isn't great, obviously, is the record, and I don't know if that's all his fault. I mean, this was a team coming into the season that traded away their best non-quarterback for future draft picks and cap space. So, I mean, that's a sign they were obviously in major rebuilding mode, obviously. But I think right now, Shoddy deserves a lot of credit for being so aggressive and assertive. Jason Garrett, I'm not blaming Garrett here, but the position was kind of handed to him. Wade Phillips, the position wasn't handed to him, but he didn't feel like he needed to be the head coach. Felt like it was just, hey, this will be fun, this will be cool, this is a good team. Maybe I get a chance to get a ring here, right? You look at Mike McCarthy, right? He wanted the Cowboys job, and he had some motivation, right? He wanted to get back into coaching, but he didn't need it. He had a Super Bowl ring. He had already won a lot of games in the NFL, right? Even Bill Parcells didn't need the Cowboys job, right? He obviously a Hall of Fame coach already. Had proved his worth. 2 Super Bowl rings, had been to a third, right? So he played for 3 different teams to the playoffs prior to the Dallas Cowboys. So again, Bill Parcells didn't need it. Barry Switzer didn't need it. You can make an argument Jimmy Johnson didn't need it, right? He wanted it as a competitor, right? Shoddy's a little different, and he's taking this much more serious than any coach I've ever seen in my lifetime for the Dallas Cowboys. And listen, I'm here for it. I think every coach should be like this, to be totally honest, right? You're in charge. You're running the show. This is your opportunity, right? And listen, there's no guarantee of success. We have no idea how this ride's going to go with Shoddy, short, medium, long term. We have no idea, right? Only time will tell. But I appreciate the effort he's putting in, and I appreciate his willingness to say, this is my team, and I am taking control of it. There are people out there, and I'm sure people watching this right now will sit there and say, oh, this is Jerry's team, this is Jerry's team, this is Jerry's team. He runs the show. Maybe that was the case in the past. I don't think it's the case anymore, guys. I think this is Shoddy's team, or it's going to become Shoddy's team. And like it or not, that's what this team is going to be going forward. And I think based on his leadership, based on his mentality, I don't hate that at all. All right, let's get into this next report. Also, courtesy of John Machota, and this one, Jerry Jones gets people hyped up. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on 105.3 The Fan. It's not as bad as it looks, but it also has a lot of room for improvement for us to be where we want to be on defense. And this, of course, got everyone's like, it's not as bad as it looks, because it looks horrifically awful, right? So it's like, what do you mean it's not as bad as it looks? Now, I know I have to defend Jerry Jones a lot here on this channel. I feel like I'm obliged to do that, even though I don't want to personally in a lot of instances, because I feel like every other person online, and maybe it's just to drive engagement or something. By the way, I learned what rage bait was the other day, and talk about me being behind the times. Yeah, because just quick sidebar here. I'll see stuff on social media. I was talking to my wife about this, especially with the Cowboys and the NFL in general, where I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This person cannot be serious that this is actually a real opinion. What the heck is this guy saying? And he's like an insider. What's he doing? And my wife's like, oh, that's rage bait. He's trying to get engagement by getting people angry. I'm like, well, it worked because I'm pissed off. It's funny. I fall for it all the time. I cite these guys on X and Twitter, and you should follow them. But boy, as a guy in my 30s, right? So it's not like I haven't been around the block that much. Obviously, I know a lot of you viewers are much older than I am and have seen a lot more in this world than I have, and God willing, I'll see a lot more. But I tell you what, social media, it eats your soul. I spend 30 minutes on it just preparing for the show, and a few times during the day in between different work tasks. Hey, what's the news going on? Is there any interesting data or anything like that? And it just eats away at you. I mean, it really does. It's an interesting it's an interesting problem. By the way, make sure you subscribe to my Twitter account, SMI Cowboy Show. Anyway, yeah. So this comment right here from Jerry Jones. One of the things that's anyone who's played or coached football at any sort of level knows that, it's a cliche, but it's true. If you win big, it's never as good as you thought it was. And if you lose big, it's never as bad as you thought it was. And it's so true. In college, we'd have big, massive victories. We beat someone by 30 points, crushed a good team on the road. Then you get in the film room and you're like, wow, we really aren't that good. Wait, that was actually kind of ugly. We got a couple lucky bounces. The opposition made a couple dumb mistakes. one of our stars had just a great game, but we didn't really win. We didn't win the physical battles at all. We had a bunch of missed assignments, whatever it may be, right? We did not play that well. And other times you can, get upset and by an inferior opponent, get killed by them. I was on the other end of that a few times, and you're like, God, we're the worst team in football history. Like, they may cancel the program. And then you get in the film room and you're like, no, you actually did pretty good. No, that was a good drive right there. That was a bad call by the ref, or, gosh darn it, we just dropped a third down pass. That was a tough catch, but it was right there. And, all these little things, and oh my goodness gracious, right? This was a perfectly blocked play, but the defender made a great tackle, whatever it is, right? And so, you're never as bad as you thought you were, and you're never as good as you thought you were. And I think what Jerry Jones is saying is basically that, right here. Now, and I get why he's saying that, because the coaches are feeding him that, and it's true. It's always true. I mean, if you look at the film, obviously there's a lot of bad for the Dallas Cowboys, but again, you're not ever as bad as you think you were. I know some people, in terms of, again, the online world, they'll only show the lowlights after a loss, and oftentimes only show the highlights after a win. So it gets and I'm like that too. I mean, because highlights are fun, right? Hey, look at this. Everybody looks great, right? It's one of those things. But it can get you lose the perception of the down by down performance of players and the team, right? If I show, people are picking on Kenny Clark, and even I had been a little critical of Kenny Clark as well, but people had been picking on him for like one or two bad plays. So I'm like, listen, he played 40 snaps, right? Or however many snaps, 40, 35, 45, something like that. I forget the exact number. It's like, listen, if he only had two bad snaps out of 40, that's like a 95% hit rate, right? So that's not too bad in terms of success. So, it's one of those things where you can get a little bit of a lost in reality kind of thing. You get a little reality distortion going on when you lose, and lose big. And I think that's what Jerry Jones is trying to say here. But boy, it draws the headline and gets people upset. All right, let's get into a report from Todd Archer, and this is a pro Shoddy post, because he's absolutely crushing it. I asked Brian Schottenheimer if the Cowboys have enough players to play the team defense they want to play, or if the players on the roster haven't played to the team's expected potential. And this is the quote. This is from Archer, quoting Shoddy. I think none of us have done good enough. I mean, coaches, players, head coach, none of us have done good enough. That's real. Our scorecard is what it is, and that's not just defensively, that's offensively. We're a football team that's 3-4-1. You can take stats on offense and shove them up your ass as far as I'm concerned. It is what it is. We want to win. People talk about, hey, MVP and this and that. Dak Prescott doesn't want to win MVP. He wants to win a Super Bowl, and that's what we want to win. We're not there yet. We've not played consistently well enough to certainly be in that discussion, but that doesn't mean the journey stops. It certainly doesn't stop. You get more focused, you get more intentional, and you've got to do it together. Awesome. This is just awesome. Like, can you imagine, this feels like something Bill Parcells would say. I mean, not literally, but that same vibe. This feels like a vibe Jimmy Johnson would say, right? Hey, what do you think about this and that? It's like, I don't care. Take those numbers and shove it up your ass. We don't care. We don't care about the MVP stuff. Shut it up. We're 3-4-1. I don't care. We're not a good football team. I remember Bill Parcells. How many times did we hear Bill Parcells say, we're a stupid football team? We're too stupid. I remember 2004 specifically. They seemed every other day. He's like, we're stupid. Even in 2005 and 6, he's like, we're doing a lot of stupid stuff, right? Even when they were winning a few games and, winning, I think, 9 games both those seasons, right? Gotta love Shoddy right here. 100% correct. Like, oh, look at the numbers. Look at the offense. No, we're a bad football team. We're a losing football team. We're not playing good enough to win a Super Bowl. We're just not. And that's fair. Doesn't mean the journey stops. Doesn't mean we don't stop working. And I love that, by the way, the process, the system. Listen, we're not there yet. Doesn't mean we don't stop working, but we're not there yet. We're not very good. Offensive, defensively, special teams, whole shebang, which is true, right? Obviously, the offense has been playing extremely well this season. But listen, if you're an offensive football team, you go on the road and you score 10 points and a half and you have 2 turnovers over the course of the game, and you leave a lot of points on the board, right? I know it sounds crazy because the Cowboys would have lost the game anyway with their defensive issues, I believe. But the offense did not play well at all. Right? You had a field goal opportunity before the half. Prescott with the interception. So it's 3 points off the board. They had a red zone drive that ended in a terrible interception by Prescott. That, call it just add another 3 points, right? And then when it was still a 2-score game right around midfield, right, they have a 3rd and 6 situation, and Turpin's open on a little stop route past the first down. It's an accurate throw, and Turpin can't make the catch. I mean, listen, the margin for error is small. There's a lot of other bad plays from the offense, by the way. Those weren't the only ones. How about special teams surrendering a 50-yard kick return? How about Turpin doing nothing on returns from his end? Lord knows he got a lot of chances on returning. And I'm not picking on these guys. Defense played terrible. We all know that. But the reality is it is a team game, right? We've seen Dallas win games 40-37, right? We know they can do it, right? We've seen them go to 40-40 ties against good teams, right? So we know if the opportunities are there, the offense can score enough, the special teams can do enough, and they didn't. The defense obviously didn't do enough either. But Shotty's approach here is absolutely perfect. We are a team. We are not playing well as a team. We are not coaching well as a team. I cannot love what he's saying anymore. This is perfect. This is the right message, right? Listen, there's a lot of coach speak. Listen, we're trying to work, trying to take it one game at a time, all these little approaches. And listen, that stuff's important, and I get it, right? But if you look at this Cowboys team right now, and the atmosphere from Garrett to McCarthy, and now the talent drain that has happened, certainly on defense over the past couple seasons, this team is in bad shape culture-wise. Team's in bad shape in terms of talent in a lot of positions. Like, it's going to take a lot to turn this around. And I don't mean it's like, a disaster class. I just mean they just don't have depth or talent at a lot of position groups, right? Or they're extremely young, right? I mean, you look at this offensive line, guys. It's basically been completely rebuilt in the last 2 years, right? Left tackle, in the last 2 years, left tackle, center, right guard, and potential future right tackle, or at least key swing tackle, Nathan Thomas, right? 4 out of the 5 or 4 out of the 6 guys in the last 2 years. That's a young team. That's a young group, guys. Linebacker core, completely rebuilt. Overshown, Leofau, Shamar James. It's a completely new group, right? Secondary defensive end, that's going to be a completely new group in years to come. They've already got some pieces that are young, but, look, Ezraku, of course, at the top of the list. But this is a completely retooled team. This is a completely different team. If you look at the top contenders, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Packers, right? Throw them out there. Even the Lions, right? Their team is stacked with guys that have been playing on those teams since at least 2022. 2021, right? And they'll have like a rookie in there in like 1 or 2 positions, right? The Lions, for example, they've got a rookie guard that they threw in the mix, right? They've got a run-stuffing defensive tackle they threw in the mix. Everyone else is basically veterans, guys that have played it for a long time, or at least been with the team multiple seasons, or were first-round picks, right? The Cowboys are throwing out Shamar James. Love Shamar James personally, but he's a rookie 5th-rounder and saying, hey, man, figure it out, right? This is a just completely overhauled team. The talent isn't there, the depth isn't there, and it's going to take time. But Shawnee's approach here is absolutely perfect, right? It's like, we are not a good football team right now. The scorecard is what it is. And I think it's the right approach to make. We're not coaching well enough. We're not playing well enough. And again, I think this is good stuff. This is what the Cowboys have needed for a long time, right? Jason Garrett, there was always that disappointment there. And Mike McCarthy on very talented teams. And to his credit, he did a good job with that famous one-trick pony comment I always say about Dan Quinn and the defense in the front office with the kind of defense they built. But the problem is they created kind of I don't want to call it a country club mentality, but it kind of was, right? It was the veterans got a lot of preferential treatment. If you were winning, things were great. And we saw in 2024 that depth, that killer instinct just wasn't there. We saw it in 2023 against good teams. The signs were there. And then 2024, the injuries and some talent discrepancies emerged, right? And like, whoa, this team isn't as good as we thought. They're not as mentally tough as we thought in a lot of ways. And now we're seeing the unwinding continue in 2025. It's going to be a multi-year process, guys. I think we all understand that at this point. And maybe this is what the Cowboys need. Maybe this is what it's finally needed to totally reset this franchise. We'll have to see in the coming weeks, weeks, months, and years, of course. But I think Shotty, he's got the right approach. Every single day, he's got the right approach. All right, this next report is from Adam Schefter. Cowboys designated defensive tackle Perrion Winfrey for return to practice today. All right, Winfrey update. A lot of people have been waiting for this. Again, a depth piece, versatile piece. It's interesting. I think this is yesterday I talked about Shotty saying 1-game season for a lot of people. I think Winfrey's return to practice, and based on how people play against Arizona and then going into the bye after Arizona, I think Winfrey's in a great position to take somebody's spot. I don't know who it is, right? Toya, Mozzie Smith, whoever, right? Maybe someone else. Who knows? But I think we're seeing a lot of guys, maybe get some opportunities here. Revel, Overshown, obviously. We look at some of these safeties, some corner changes, maybe some linebackers shuffling around. Now we add defensive line into the mix potentially. I think defensive end was going to be a position of change anyway coming into the bye, right? There's going to be a lot of there's even some running back question about running back too. Malik Davis and Jaden Blue. I think Shotty has said Malik Davis is doing a lot of good things, right? Jaden Blue obviously had the fumble, which makes isn't good. So I think it's something to keep in mind going forward. The Cowboys, I mean, the meritocracy element that Shotty has tried to trumpet, right? It's like, listen, we're going to see, for a lot of guys, it's a 1-game season because Winfrey, Overshown, Revel, Malik Davis at running back potentially, right? You look at a lot of other secondary folks, Kalen Carson, Bridges, young guy, Elijah Clark coming back when he gets beat up, right? What are they going to do across the board here? I mean, basically for a lot of guys, hey, listen, Monday Night Football is your chance to prove you want to be a key player for the Cowboys the rest of the season and going forward. We'll see how some of these guys do. All right, this is from Joseph Hoyt. Interesting quote from the Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer on the defense. He says, there will be change, but the change is not necessarily what makes this thing go. What makes it go is the execution, and that's what I want everybody to understand. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the correct message once again, right? I think he's made numerous changes, and in some ways they've worked, but it's the execution of those changes, right? You need better run fits. You need guys to win reps. You need guys to not lose reps on defense in certain situations, looking at coverage. And I think that's a key part, right? They're going to make some changes week to week. They're going to make personnel changes. Guys, they're still trying to figure it out, right? We have no idea. The Cowboys are at this point in the season, right? They played 8 games. They're about to play their 9th. They have no idea what their secondary is in terms of personnel. A lot of that's injuries, right? Diggs out, Bland's missed time, Revel, Carson, Butler, guys out, Wilson out, Hooker out, Wanye Thomas, although he was back at practice. Hopefully that's some good news there. So it's one of those things where, they don't know who their secondary is. Linebacker core, same thing, right? Sanborn Murray, Sanborn out, Shamar James in, right? A lot more Leofow, no more Damone Clark, Overshoring coming back into the fold, right? Their linebacking core is volatile. Defensive end, right? Hey, listen, they started with this group. They're going to play. They play James Houston a little bit more. Listen, Ezraku's taking more snaps than anybody, right? They're trying to figure that out, right? And it's one of those things. And you sit there and say, oh my goodness, it's 8 games into the season. They're trying to figure it out. Guys, when you have talent deficiency issues, it takes sometimes years to figure it out, right? And you got to go through the process. It sucks. It really does suck, and it's frustrating on Sundays to watch. But listen, this is what happens when you go through a great unwinding, which is what the Cowboys are in the middle of right now. They should have done it after 2023. That wild card defeat against the Green Bay Packers should have been just a glaring sign, hey, there are clear problems here. This is a team that's so top-heavy, but so vulnerable strategically. There are things that need to change. And the Cowboys, to their credit, in a single draft, heavily rebuilt the offensive line. BB, Guyton, and Nathan Thomas, right? So I think BB's good. I think Guyton's got some potential. He's playing better, and Thomas has potential as well. At the very least, he's a very good backup tackle. So they kind of did some good things there to rebuild the offensive line. But the defense, if you look at the talent there across the board, I mean, a lot of guys they let go in terms of, walk over the last couple seasons. I mean, they're not. Kendricks, for example, I mean, he was a veteran, but he's not anywhere. No one's playing Stephon Gilmore. Right? You look at, of course, Chauncey Golston, no impact there in terms of what he's done going forward. Jonathan Hankins was a key part of the Dallas defensive line in 2023. He's doing nothing. Now, I'm not trying to pick on those guys. I'm just making a point here, right? Where if you look at the team and the team that they kind of built for that 2023 and into 2024, a lot of those guys are, frankly, out of the league or not playing significantly anymore, right? In 2 years. Right, they basically hyper maximize for one season, and they try to retool it one more time in 2024. And obviously, that was a terrible idea. They should have fired McCarthy after 23. But how do you do it? How do you fire Mike McCarthy after his quarterback just had an MVP caliber season? You win a division title in 12 games. You couldn't do it, right? And that's the thing that stunk. I think one of the great unfortunate realities of the 2020s Dallas Cowboys is that in 2023 they didn't go 9-8 and get knocked out of the first round. They should have. They just played such an easy schedule, and because of their defensive structure with Parsons and things like that, they were able to overwhelm some teams. But I mean, if it's one of those things, if they go 9-8 and get knocked out of the wild card, we're in a better spot today. I guarantee that. But because they felt forced to try and, let's squeeze a little bit more out of it for one more season, we got the results of 2024, and now we're dealing with the even more severe issues in 2025. Right? I mean, volatility, talent deficiencies. I mean, there's a lot of problems here that they got to work through, and Shawnee has the right approach. Listen, it's about execution. It's about the guys have to figure it out. The guys have to prove they belong. These are open tryouts, right? Shamar James, open tryout, right? Wanye Thomas, Bell at safety, Bridges, right? Reddy Stewart, right? Who's by the way doing a great job with his opportunities. I think he's a core piece to be a versatile guy around. Maris Leofow, Ezraku, right? You look across the board, right? This is your chance. This is your opportunity. Some people, James Houston, seem to be taking advantage of it. A lot of the other guys I mentioned. Some people, Sam Williams, not taking advantage of it, right? This is what Shawnee's talking about. Got to execute. All right, and just kind of an interesting note here. Art Stapleton commented that the Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors had his ACL surgery today. I don't know if you guys remembered. He hurt his knee, unfortunately, in that MetLife turf, which is a disaster. He's on the road to recovery. Surgery was performed by Cowboys team physician Dr. Dan Cooper, per source. And I bring this up just to highlight when people talk about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys and the criticism for the Jones family, the one thing they don't do is there is no expense spared for the infrastructure for Dallas, whether it's weight room, training facilities, medical staff. I mean, the Cowboys is first class, 100%, right? They spend more money on anything when it comes to this kind of stuff. They get top people like team doctors, like surgeons, physicians, and they throw them a lot of money, right? And that's one of the things Jerry Jones doesn't get a lot of credit for. There are a lot of other franchises. The Bengals are like this, for example. The Browns are like this. There's a lot of other ones where they don't have nearly this model. They don't nearly have this attention. I mean, the New York Giants called the Cowboys to say, hey, can you do the surgery? Like, instead of having their own team doctor, it's the Giants. They obviously have their own staff. Like, hey, listen, we want the Cowboys doctor. It's because Jerry Jones is willing to put his resources into this kind of stuff. And I do think that matters. And I do think that's why the Cowboys were very disappointed in Trayvon Diggs for staying away from the team during his rehab. Because it's like, listen, we want to pay you money to take advantages of the stuff that we paid a lot of money for. Physicians, rehab, all this stuff. And we want to monitor it. And he's like, no thanks. I can do my own thing and be ready by week 1. And now that we have, at the time we said, hey, good job, Trayvon Diggs. You did your own thing. You sacrificed the money and you're ready week 1. And now you're on injured reserve less than halfway through the season. Hate to say it, guys, but when it comes to that, the Cowboys were right. They spend the money on these spots, and other teams want to use them, and Cowboys like Trayvon Diggs. They should have been smart to use them as well. All right, let's get into the comments here. All right, this is from David Dobbins. Got back-to-back comments from Dave here. Let's check it out. Sell off Pickens and Lambs for loads of picks. Laughing face emoji. We got Aubrey and Turpin. Spend all your capital on defense. Great defense means punts, which means Turpins, or it means turnovers. Both mean shorter fields. Shorter fields with Aubrey. Dallas's offensive youth and Dak should be able to handle cleanup. Okay, obviously, a little tongue-in-cheek there. And then he also adds the greatest one-trick pony, the pass rush win rate. If the secondary, I spent a lot of time talking about pass rush win rate yesterday. It's an interesting stat. If the secondary can just make the QB wait or hesitate or have to look, this pass rush works. I'm still firing almost everybody probably ASAP, but I'm more worried about the linebackers and safeties at this point. When it comes to Diggs, I'm thinking the training staff is having to undo botched nonsense by outside rehab, just like Revel. It seems like that may be the case, right? And I don't know if that's the case, that's extrapolated, but it kind of feels like that, where it's like, dude, you did your outside rehab. Yeah, I'm ready week 1. And it turns out that you're not, right? You struggled against the Giants and the Bears, did better as the season went on, but you're clearly not 100%. I mean, hindsight's 2020, of course, but maybe you should have been in the building. I don't know. Regards to Foots, at least he's a coach. He's usually positive, and he's not wrong here. Elam was avoiding all contact. Edit, replying to the commenter, secondary is a lost cause. Give him a tick. I've been anxiously waiting for Revel and Butler since before the season started. Unfortunately, Revel might not really happen this year, and having doubts about Butler. Carson is a strong possibility, had his moments last year, and mostly was undercoached, young, and then injured. He's got talent. Nobody on defense had a clue last year either. People forget. Yeah, that final point, like it's one of those things. Last year, Dallas, I think, finished like top 3 in sacks or something like that, and they still surrendered the 3rd most points. Right, they're horrendous at stopping the run. I mean, horrendous at stopping the run while having an elite pass rush. Right, think about that for a second. This year they're bad at everything, and it sort of becomes a compounding effect. Last year they had a really good pass rush. They were when Parsons was playing, of course. So you take the couple of games where he didn't play out of the equation, but they had a really good pass rush, and the Saints still got him for 44. The Ravens got him for 28, and it should have been 40. Right, the Eagles got him for 34 and 41. And later in the season, the Commanders 26 and 23. Right. The Bengals 27, right? You can go down the list here of, the Texans 34, right? You just keep walking down the list here of, part of that was, bad offensive play and some turnovers didn't help the defense, of course, right? But listen, so I certainly think they were better defensively last year, but despite having Parsons and despite being, top 10 in sacks or top 5 in sacks, whatever it was, they still were not a great defense, right? They just kind of survived on takeaways. Again, they were one of the league leaders in takeaways too when it was all said and done. I think they were top 10. And despite that, they're one of the bottom performing defenses. So, and they weren't good defensively last year. So again, even though, people forget that they struggled last year too, obviously, and obviously the struggles have continued and gotten worse and been exacerbated, but I do think you need to give them time, right? The great unwinding on defense is upon us, right? It's going to take time, and it's not going to take weeks. It's probably going to take years. This is from It's Juma 3231. Hear me out. Williams could ride the bench and have the same impact with Fowler. Arguably, Houston, Ezzy are the only ones consistently balling. Clowney is getting there. Why don't we run Solomon Thomas off the edge so the D line would look like Thomas, Clark, Toya, Ezzy on rundowns, and Houston, Clark, Osa, Ezzy on pass downs. Boy, you just want to get a lot of Kenny Clark and a lot of Ezaraku reps there. We don't disagree, by the way. And then rotate Clowney and Thomas on pass downs as needed. I'd slowly like to see Thomas, Clark, and Osa on the field at the same time, even if it's a five-man front with Clowney. Thomas, Osa, Clark, Ezzy. If our edges aren't producing and our DT are our strength, so focus the pass rush on the interior, and hopefully someone gets home. I think personnel, some changes. I don't know if it's exactly that, maybe necessary. But listen, they've been playing Ezaraku a lot. I don't like how he's not a starter at this point, and I think that changes. It may change Monday night. I think that changes out of the bye because he's playing more reps than anybody. So I think at a certain point, listen, he's the starter, making the starter. He's playing all these reps. Bench is Sam Williams. I think it needs to happen. I think Dante Fowler has been a non-impact, but I think he hasn't been as categorically bad as Sam Williams is, right? Fowler will have his moments, and have a game here or something like that where Sam Williams just has nothing. He'll have like one play in a blue moon where it's like, there's that potential, and then he'll be just awful the rest. It's tough to watch from when it comes to him. As for your comments on Foots, I agree it's easier to say these things behind a screen, but if you want just content, you're usually fair with his critiques. At this point, when week in and week out, you go, well, there's number 20 missing his assignment again. It's only a matter of time before you start seeing the frustration. If you look at how he talks about Diggs, it's a very similar deal. As a former DB in high school, I was never the fastest or tallest, actually quite undersized, but I was on the field because I wasn't scared of the contact, and my coaches knew I'd hit the ball carrier and not get hit. That was a handful of plays where you see Elam hesitate to hit gaps or get tackles, hence why Flynn said what he said. Might not agree with it, but if you have a chance to make a play and you choose not to do it, you're opening doors for questions of character, because if we look at the other side of the field, we got Deron Bland and Reddy Stewart who hit holes faster than some of our linebackers. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to like destroy Foots the King or anything like that. I just think if you question another man's heart and effort, and you can't read his mind, obviously, so that's one flaw with that. But if you do it, especially if he has a coaching background, I mean that's obviously a little bit more forgivable in my mind. But listen, man, it's one of those things. I just don't think it's a good path to go on, because if you criticize his performance, hey, he missed his assignment, missed the tackle, whatever it may be, that's one thing. But if you criticize his effort, his heart, it's a slippery slope to, oh, he's a bad person, right? He's a terrible human being. And we can look outside in the world we live in today where how things quickly snowball, where I don't, personally think you're doing good things. I don't like you with your, in terms of what you support, but I think you're a good person. We live in a world now where if you don't agree with someone in a lot of cases, that means the other side's a bad person, right? The opposition to your statement is a bad person. And we've seen what that's happened to our society. And I'm not saying Foots the King is like that. I'm not saying any of you guys are like that. I'm just saying we can all observe that's what's going on in the world around us, right? Oh, this person isn't doing what I'd like them to do. Therefore, they don't have they're not playing with heart. They're not playing with good effort. And then it becomes, well, they're a bad person, right? And then things get dark very quickly from there. So that's one of my consternation points when it comes to that. And also, if you've never played the game or if you've never coached at a high level, you have no idea what's going on. So in terms of what the play call is and the strategy is. So I think without being in the locker room, without being in the film room, I'm very hesitant. Like the coaches for Dallas, they can question and eviscerate players' efforts for sure, right? They're in the film room, they're in the locker room, right? For us on the outside, let's hesitate with that a little bit, because I don't like where it leads. And I think most people would agree with that. All right, this next comment is from Plague Doctor. Hey, I'm trying to shorten my comments. I made a little progress. Hey, man, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're all about. Also, not a fan of tanking, but if we're not in the playoffs, I don't want the 18th pick as a consolation. I think with Derek Carr, he just hated the Cowboys. I do think some players / teams treat playing us as our Super Bowl. I mean, I hate the Eagles, which I think is valid. Their fans are super disrespectful from Santa Claus to Irvin, and I just don't like Sirianni's face. That's fair. I don't like Sirianni's face either. At the same time, I like Hurts, who I met when he went to OU and thought he was a stellar dude. My feelings on the season don't hinge around beating them, though. Kyler, on the other hand, was rather cocky and dismissive when I met him, so I do hope we beat him. Foots and his collective are rage baiters. Attack on Cowboys used to be in it, but even he was too rage baity for them. Law Nation is the only one I like from that group. There's a reason I only come to talk Cowboys with you and why you get these theses from me. Mike Fisher is also pretty good, but for more of the older crowd, in my opinion, Vonch is kind of a middle ground who does shows with Broadus, who I mentioned before. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things because as I've done more research and I live a little bit more online now, which of course is bad for my health, as it is for everybody's living in the Twitter world and stuff like that. I mean, some of this stuff, the rage baiting stuff, it just like, I mean, it's hard. I have to like turn off the computer. I'm like, I gotta go do something else, right? Because it'll just suck you in and it'll just eat you alive. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, I tell you what, I hate that he plays for the Eagles because I just love his story. It's one of the great stories in football. One of the things I'll never forget, I actually attended an Alabama game when he was the year after he got benched on their postseason run for Tua, and then he, came back to the Alabama Crimson Tide program for another year. And I remember being in the stadium, they were blowing some team out, and I forget who it was, and he entered the game like in the fourth quarter. And I'll never forget, that's the loudest I've ever seen a stadium get, like standing ovation for like minutes. And I was like, this kid has something, right? The appreciation and love from the fans that he's garnered for just doing something relatively simple, unusual, but simple. There is something special there. And it's just charisma, it's just talent, it's leadership. I mean, there is something special with Jalen Hurts as an individual. And I mean, I witnessed that in Tuscaloosa that day. And this was before he got drafted. And then he went to the Eagles, and I got to root against him every single Sunday, which I hate because I think his story is awesome. And he seems like such a good dude. And he's a great leader. But I mean, there is something special with Jalen Hurts for sure. Tony White. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that. I'm going to maybe Tony White. I'd rather see Wilson from the movie Castaway at safety than Donovan ever again. At least the other Wilson could be left on an island. Listen, if you came up with that yourself, that is kudos. That is awesome. That's a great comment. I mean, a little bit mean, but I mean, I think it's pretty funny. By the way, compare that with the Foots to King thing, just to kind of circle back to that. That's kind of, that's kind of funny. That's like, I don't think Donovan Wilson's playing well. I'd rather see a volleyball with a face painted on it, right, from a Tom Hanks movie in the 1990s than to see a Donovan Wilson play safety again, right? That's kind of funny, right? That's not a personal thing, right? And I think that's more what I like. I like that. That's a great comment. A Football Fanatic 1 writes, I personally think if we get a Demario Davis type, it would set the defense off as long as our secondary gets healthy. Yeah, Demario Davis, I mean, that's an interesting name. I actually really like that kind of player. He's 36 with New Orleans now, so I think, it's one of those things where I don't know what more he has left on the tank or maybe they can find a player like him. But I do agree they need a stabilizing influence at linebacker, especially once Overshown returns. And Kenneth Murray ain't it, right? I mean, he's a short-term stopgap. They tried. I don't know what they were expecting because he wasn't that good with the Los Angeles Chargers. But sometimes you need to change the scenery, right? Worked well with Pickens, worked well with Javonte Williams, right? Which, by the way, brings me to another point. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, Kyrie Elam isn't working out at all. He sucked with the Bills. Oh, my goodness. Kenneth Murray isn't working out at all. He sucked with the Chargers. What are they doing? Well, sometimes a change of scenery does work, right? We have seen it this year with the Dallas Cowboys, with George Pickens, for example, right? He's a locker room cancer. He's inconsistent. Comes to Dallas, and he's playing the best football of his life, and everybody loves him. Javonte Williams, his career's over. His knees are gone, right? Sad story. Hey, it turns out he's got some more gas in the tank, right? Listen, this happens all the time. Now, look, there are a lot of instances where it doesn't work, and relying on, reclamation projects a lot, which Dallas did this year, I think was, frankly, not very smart. But look at Solomon Thomas, right? A lot of people are like, his career's over, former first rounder, it's ran its course. Hey, guess what? He's actually been a really good leader and a good defensive tackle as a backup for the Cowboys in a lot of instances. So, it's a mixed bag. You don't want to rely. I think the Cowboys relied way too much on reclamation projects. But just because someone is a reclamation project doesn't mean they can't turn it around. And unfortunately, they've had a lot of hits, Williams, Thomas to a certain extent, certainly George Pickens, and they've had some big misses, obviously Murray and Elam being the most obvious of those guys. But I do like Demario Davis, that kind of player, right? That kind of middle linebacker, that stabilizing influence, Overshown, Leah Fowles, Shamar James, and Demario Davis type. That's a good bunch. That is a good bunch. All right, this is from Dave Irwin. Nick, you are better than this. A lazy graphic of man versus zone percentage tells us little to nothing. There are also various types of man coverage, just like there are various types of zone coverage. There are also various techniques taught, press, off, trail, etc. As for blitz rate, did he bring 4 and still drop a lineman? Did he bring 5? He never brings 6 or 7 or 8. I've yet to see cover 0. This DC is absolutely stubborn, and it's reflected in the players' effort. They don't believe the DC trusts them, and they don't trust the DC. Every defender on the team has regressed, and that's on the coaches. I mean, listen, man, I got the graphic, I think, from the DLLS Cowboys podcast. But listen, Dave, if you want me to map out, the number of times they do press, or trail man, or how many times they do cover zero, or how many times they rush 4 versus 5 and do a zone blitz, you're going to have to at least become a member. I mean, that's going to take me a long time to go through all of the Cowboys film and map out every single defensive play. So listen, the graphic is what the graphic is. Now, I do think part of it is, right, people want to blame Eberflus and people want to blame the defensive coaching staff. And listen, I've said this before. I don't think I think he may not be the answer. I don't know if Shawnee believes he's the answer, right, in terms of the long-term solution for the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator position. But is he the problem? I don't think so. I mean, they've enacted numerous wholesale changes, I believe spearheaded by Shawnee, and they still have the same talent issues. Now, obviously, injuries play a role, but every team has injuries, right? It's just no excuse. We get it. You're not going to give up 3 points a game, but you got to give up fewer than 40, at least consistently. So, I mean, yeah. And then when you talk about the players' effort, listen, I've watched the players. I watched the games. I'm sure you do too. It's not a lack of effort. Bridges was playing his tail off, hustling all the time, giving everything he had. He just had a really, really bad day. Rookie 7th rounder. It's going to happen, right? Played his absolute tail off, right? I think Shamar James played with an incredibly high level of effort. Just had an awful day. I think Osa, Kenny Clark, Ezaraku play with a lot of effort. James Houston plays with a lot of effort. Reddy Stewart plays with a lot of effort, right? It's just Ron Bland plays with great effort. He's had a great season, by the way. Talk about a player that's regressed. He's improved. His tackling, a lot better than what we've seen. And, of course, he's back to his first pick 6 since 2023. And that's with missing some time this year with injuries. So, again, I think there's a lot of effort there. I don't see a lack of effort. I see a lack of talent. You can make some arguments, some scheme and coaching there, of course, as there always is. But I don't think it's an effort thing. This next comment is from Buddha Namaste 597. Let's not forget it wasn't the Cowboys, but Diggs who gave his own timetable on when he think he'll be back. Salute to this channel. Fire emoji. Plays Zion Childress. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Zion Childress gets opportunities down the stretch. I think they got other guys they're trying to get into the mix now, right? But we'll see. Again, the bye week could be an opportunity for Childress for sure. I think they want to see what he can do on special teams consistently first, right? Because obviously that's how you got to make your name long term. But with the Diggs commentary, yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. He did his own thing. He said, I'll be ready week 1. And he was ready week 1 to his credit. Mixed bag the first month of the season. And now he's shut down for at least 4 games. And he's got multiple injuries. He's got some flaws. He's not playing with confidence. There's been some locker room issues. So, yeah, I mean, Diggs, he did his own thing to be ready week 1. And he showed up and was ready. And it's been a lot of issues on and off the field and with injuries. So take that for what it's worth. Northern Cowboy 8409 writes, if I was looking at the same graph, talk about the graph I showed yesterday with pass rush win rate, the x-axis is a double team rate. I'm really scratching my head as to why Sam Williams is the 4th most doubles starting defensive end and Fowler is 15th most. That really doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. That graphic was just weird. It's just numbers where it's just like, maybe it's true, maybe it's accurate, but I felt like it didn't pass the smell test. I'm not saying it was bad data. I'm just saying the data they collected is just, there's just some sort of qualifying information there. I don't know where they pulled it from. It just seemed weird to me, but it was interesting. So if you actually take the data at face value, right, there's Sam Williams and Fowler are having, okay seasons, right, instead of the duds they look like they're having. So it's one of those things where you got to kind of get more data, right? It's a scientific method. All right, you got a hypothesis based on an observation. You run some data, you test it, and it turns out the test doesn't confirm your hypothesis. So you got to go back, look at your observation again. Like, no, they still stink. Fowler and Williams still aren't playing well. Okay, maybe we need to do a different test, right, or retest it. And I think that's where we're at right now. Typical Cowboys fan writes, I honestly appreciate your content. I personally enjoy your videos over those successful so-called content creators. Thank you. Those are very nice comments. I greatly appreciate it from the Typical Cowboys fan. I love all the commenters, right? One of the things I love about the channel and the comments, and I see some of you guys chop it up in the comment section, is that, I'm open to all opinions. You can tell me I'm an idiot. You can tell me I suck. You can tell me I'm better than this. Thank you, Dave, for that. And that's fine. I don't take it personally, of course. I mean, I have my opinions. I have my thoughts. I got my background, but I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say, right? I'm open to hearing what your thoughts are, what your process is, and what you think the Cowboys shouldn't do, what you think did happen, what didn't happen, what will happen, what won't happen. I mean, I'm all about that, right? I'm all open about hearing what your inputs are, what your thoughts are. If you guys got some interesting data points or interesting perspectives, right? I think that's what you should do as a fan base, right? I think if you listen to one or two voices, whether it's the team voices or whether it's someone outside the team, you're missing out on a collective group of what I think are pretty smart people. I look at most of the comments, most of it's smart people giving your thoughts. So, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't shout it out and listen and read them just to say, maybe I need to think about this differently, right? And so I appreciate all the commenters and I appreciate all the viewers, right? Really smart bunch. And that was one of my goals with this channel, was to create a bunch of smart people that were willing and able to communicate their ideas effectively to see if we can, put together a better picture of this team, both in the present and the future. All right, but that's enough for today. I think obviously the Cowboys middle of practice, working their way to get prepared for the upcoming opponent. Injuries abound at safety. Wilson in rehab group. Juwanye Thomas back at practice. Monday night game, will it give them enough time for both those guys to get ready? We'll have to see. Of course, Cooper Beebe back at practice. It looks like he'll make his debut. Winfrey off of IR. He's practicing. Overshown Revel getting closer to returning, or emerging, in this case, debuting for Revel. So, again, I think there's some young guys. It's going to be interesting to see the rest of the season who plays and who doesn't, as the Cowboys try and figure out who the heck they're going to be on defense personnel-wise. That is going to be the question to try and answer over the next 9 games or so. But until then, until tomorrow, of course, I am Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.